Hey everyone, welcome to Trigger Precision Machine. Yesterday we finished up the breakdown series with that nice video on the Accuracy International Sniper Rifle, so if you missed that, go ahead and check it out. Today we're going to talk about something different. We're going to spend a few minutes and talk about reloading, but this is such a big topic that we're going to break it up into a few videos. Today we're just going to focus on the tools that I use in my process. So I've been reloading precision rifle ammo for about 20 years now. And I'd have to say it's been a constant evolution of change. At some point or another, I've changed just about everything and anything that I could, and probably certain things maybe even more than once. So you learn a lot about the process when you break it down and see what the individual changes do to the accuracy and the consistency that you see on target. So with that being said, let's take a look at some of the tools. Over the years, I've concentrated on improving two things. First off, the accuracy of my reloads. Second, shortening the time I spend reloading because, quite honestly, shooting is a lot more fun than reloading. So each tool that I purchase is with the goal to improve one of these things or possibly both at once if I'm lucky. The tools I'm about to go over are the result of my experience reloading to meet my personal shooting goals. I'm not a bench press shooter, but I still have reasonable goals when I'm reloading for my precision rifles. I like my rifle and ammunition to be able to give me sub 1/2 MOA groups at 100 yards. So basically that's smaller than 1/2 of an inch for 3 to 5 shots, and that depends on the rifle, the use, and what I'm trying to accomplish. Clean, prep, and prime. Those are always the first three things that I do. For case cleaning, I've experimented with quite a bit of stuff out there, and I've settled on two methods. Wet tumbling with stainless steel pins and dry vibratory tumbling with treated walnut or corncob media. The tumbler you see here is made by a company called Extreme Tumblers, and it's the Rebel 17 model. This one's a few years old and still does a great job, and I have yet to find a better way to clean the brass. It literally comes out of this tumbler looking like new when you're done. Some people don't think it matters, and it may not, but the cleanliness of my brass is one of those elements that I can control, so I can take advantage of it. If I'm in a hurry or loading a bunch of rounds for a match or a class, then I'll use this ancient Dillon vibratory tumbler. It works well, but it doesn't get the cases half as clean as the wet tumbler. Moving on from our cleaning routine, we get into case prep. I use some very simple tools for this. I use these little carbide primer pocket cutters to uniform primer pockets on new brass and clean the primer pockets on fired brass. These little tools are easy to use. I chuck them in a cordless drill and spin them on low speed, and the process goes pretty quick. I believe these are from Sinclair International. The next tool is this little flash hole reamer. I'm not sure the brand, but this works for large and small primers, and it's pretty simple to use by hand. And I generally don't mess with the inside of the flash hole, but I know there can be burrs from punched or drilled holes, and I try to generally stick with Lapua brass, so it's pretty rare to have a burr in there. The next stage of my prep is resizing. There's a lot of dies out there. Some size just the neck, some size the body, some size both, some bump the shoulder of the case back. I try and manipulate the brass as little as necessary since Fireform brass is just that. It literally came out of my rifle's chamber with a near perfect fit. I've settled on using Redding dies for everything. I love their competition line of dies. I like their S-type dies. They've always worked well and never given me any fuss. Die selection really comes down to personal preference, and it's almost like a Ford versus Chevy thing. So I use Redding Type S bushing dies, and this is a full-length resizing die. This die gives you full length sizing that you can control by adjusting the die height, and you have full control over the neck sizing as well, and they do this using bushings that come in 1,000th increments. Final step in case prep is to trim, chamfer, and deburr the case mouth. I accomplish this in one operation using a Giro case trimmer, which is probably one of the best investments I ever made in reloading tools. It's just a huge time saver and does a great job. It uses caliber-specific shell holders for a consistent cut, has a replaceable carbide cutter, and it offers plenty of adjustment. And after that, we prime our cases. I use a very simple RCBS hand primer. It just simply works. It's nothing fancy, but I do have my eye on one of the Primal Rights competition primer seeders, so maybe one day I'll grab one of those. But for now, this RCBS tool does everything I need it to. After we're all primed up, now it's time to measure powder charges and fill cases. This is another one of those processes that took several years and changes to get where I currently am today. I'm using an A&D FX120i lab scale with an auto trickler V3 that's been upgraded by some nice Area 419 aluminum goodies. This thing's a huge time saver and very accurate. Highly recommended. And now comes the exciting part, when we actually get to seat a bullet and finally talk about this reloading press. Right now I use one of Area 419 Zero presses, and I have to say this thing is absolutely functional art. It's awesome looking, rigid, and adaptable with the interchangeable turret heads. This is an expensive press, but is absolutely necessary. And to that question, I'm going to say no. I loaded for several years on an RCBS Rock Chucker and a Dillon 550 Progressive, and I loaded equally as accurate ammo on each of those machines. This is just a nice and smooth machine to use, and it makes life much easier since you aren't changing out dies constantly. And here's a couple other tools that get used pretty heavily during the reloading process. First has to be these Mitutoyo calipers. Good calipers are a must. Save up and buy some good ones so you can accurately inspect your work. Next, this little Sinclair comparator is absolutely indispensable for properly measuring your seating depth and shoulder to case head dimension. And finally, the bench source annealer. This thing is an absolute workhorse. It's easy to use, quick to set up, and it absolutely tears up the annealing process. It takes a little finesse and practice to get everything right, but it does a very consistent job at annealing. So that's just a list and a little info on the main tools I use. I'm sure I'm forgetting something important, but we will cover that when I take you guys through the whole loading process step by step in another video. Until then, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.